Chapter 2, The Turning Point, Love Awakens Freedom. Transformation often begins in the smallest of moments. For me, it wasn't a grand event or a sudden epiphany. It was a conversation with a client on an otherwise unremarkable day. That moment became the seed of change, reminding me that even in the depths of struggle, love and freedom are within reach if we choose to pursue them. A conversation that sparked change. She was one of my regular clients, someone whose kindness had always stood out. That day, as I worked on her nails, she asked me, "How are you, really?" Her tone was genuine, her eyes kind, and for a second, I felt the urge to open up. But years of hiding my struggles made me hesitate. Instead, I mumbled a vague response and tried to steer the conversation elsewhere. She didn't press me, but she began to share her own story. She talked about how mindfulness had helped her through a difficult time in her life. She described how simple practices, like breathing exercises and journaling, gave her the tools to manage her emotions and regain a sense of control. Her words were casual, yet they struck a chord deep within me. Could something so simple really make a difference? Could I find freedom, too? That conversation lingered in my mind long after she left. It wasn't just her story. It was the realization that change was possible, even for me. That night, I sat with a notebook, staring at the blank pages. I didn't know what to write or how to start, but I made a promise to myself I would try. Small steps toward freedom. The days that followed were filled with small, tentative steps. I began experimenting with mindfulness, starting with just 5 minutes of deep breathing each morning. At first, it felt awkward and unnatural, but over time, those minutes became a sanctuary, a space where I could quiet the chaos in my mind and focus on the present moment. Journaling became another tool in my journey. I wrote without structure or judgment, pouring my thoughts onto the page. At first, it was messy and scattered, but gradually, patterns began to emerge. I started to notice the things that triggered my anxiety and the moments that brought me peace. Writing became a way to untangle the knot of emotions I had been carrying for so long. One of the most transformative steps was reconnecting with tennis. I had always loved the sport, but PTSD had taken away the joy I once felt on the court. Now, I approached it differently. Instead of focusing on competition, I focused on the rhythm, the back and forth of the ball, the steadiness of my breath, the way my body moved with each swing. Tennis became a form of meditation, a way to ground myself in the present and rediscover the freedom I thought I had lost. Breaking free from fear. One of the hardest lessons I learned during this time was that freedom isn't the absence of fear. It's the choice to move forward despite it. There were days when the anxiety felt overwhelming, when I doubted whether I was making any progress at all. But each time I chose to take another small step, I proved to myself that I was capable of change. I remember a particularly challenging day at work. A client was unhappy with her nails, and her criticism triggered a wave of self-doubt. My old habits kicked in. I wanted to apologize excessively, to blame myself for every small detail. But then I remembered my breath. I paused, took a deep inhale, and reminded myself that I had done my best. Instead of reacting defensively, I calmly addressed her concerns and fixed the issue. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. That moment may seem small, but for me, it was monumental. It was a reminder that I didn't have to be perfect to move forward. I could face challenges with grace, even when fear was present. Throughout this journey, love became my guiding force. My love for tennis reminded me of the importance of balance and flow. My love for learning inspired me to seek new tools and perspectives. My love for true freedom pushed me to break free from the patterns that had held me back. But most importantly, I began to cultivate a love for myself, a love that had been missing for far too long. I learned to celebrate my small victories, to forgive myself for setbacks, and to trust that I was worthy of the freedom I was seeking. Lessons from the turning point. The turning point in my journey wasn't a single moment. It was a series of choices, each one rooted in love and courage. Looking back, here are the lessons that stood out. 1. Freedom begins with a choice. Transformation doesn't require a grand gesture. It starts with a decision to take one small step toward change. 2. Love is the foundation of growth. Whether it's love for a hobby, a person, or yourself, Love gives you the strength to keep going. 3. Progress, not perfection. True freedom isn't about doing everything right. It's about showing up, trying, and learning along the way. Takeaways for the reader. Start small. Choose one practice, whether it's journaling, mindfulness, or reconnecting with something you love, and commit to it for just a few minutes each day. Celebrate your wins. No matter how small, every step forward is progress worth celebrating. Find your anchor. Identify the things that bring you peace and joy and make them a priority in your life. This chapter captures the essence of your turning point, emphasizing the role of love, freedom, and small steps in transformation. Let me know if you'd like to refine or expand any sections.